If you love classic contemporary Christian music and the people that made it, please like this video and subscribe to our channel to help support us and keep us going. This is Stage Right, and I am your host, John Thorne. They say if you die with a handful of friends, you die a rich man. Well, I have several buses full, and I'm very excited to share them all with you. Welcome to Stage Right. I am your host, John Thorne. You have tuned in today for episode 18. Kind of hard to believe, but here we are, the end of January already. Pretty crazy. 2021 is flying by. So I want to share a story with you about my guest today. Back in 1987, 88, and 89, Andy Chrisman and I were in Truth together. And for those that don't know Truth, you really need to look him up. Roger Breland and Truth. You can search them on YouTube. You can find them probably on Spotify. I'm not sure, but they're out there. There's videos, there's songs and stuff. You need to check out their albums and stuff. So Andy and I were on the road together. And in 1989, I said to Andy, okay, so your birthday's coming up. What do you want for your birthday? And he's like, take me to see the new Batman movie. So one day we had a day off. We went to see the new Batman movie featuring Michael Keaton and Jack Nicholson. So then he said, well, your birthday's in 2 weeks. What do you want for your birthday? And I said, well, Whiteheart's got a new album out. Why don't you pick that up for me? So he went and bought Whiteheart Freedom, gave it to me on cassette. So I opened up that cassette. I put it in my Sony Walkman, and my ears and my mind were just taken to a place I had never imagined a Christian band could go. For those of you that know the Whiteheart Freedom album, it's one of the best Christian rock albums ever. Amazing songs, amazing musicianship. And I remember thinking, oh my gosh, if I was only this good. So I began to listen to that album every day. And ultimately, when I left Truth, I took that album back to Michigan and I listened to it in the car every day. And I started practicing and learning and working on those bass parts, not because I ever dreamed I would audition for Whiteheart, but because they were such good songs with such creative bass parts. And listening to those parts made me want to be a better musician. And I remember listening to it and playing them and trying to figure this out and figure that out and digging in. And it was the work ethic that I actually learned when I was in Truth. It's that tough music can be played. You just have to put in the time to learn it. You can be better than you are. In fact, you should want to be better than you are. And if it weren't for Roger Breland and Truth giving me a chance to be surrounded by some of the best singers and musicians in the country, I would have never had the chance to play for Whiteheart. I could have listened to that album all day long. I would have never known how to be better. I would have never known how to be good enough if it hadn't been for the opportunity Roger Breland gave me to travel and be a member of Truth. My good friend Andy Chrisman is coming up right after the break, but first a quick word from our sponsor, Hey Rockstar.
Hey Rockstar provides digital marketing software and services to generate more leads, more exposure, and more revenue for your business or organization. Let Hey Rockstar amplify your awesomeness.
Ladies and gentlemen, pull off to the side of the road, get out of your cars and stand and cheer for the one, the only, Mr. Andy Chrisman. How you doing, dude?
Hey, sports page.
Okay, that brings up point number one. Explain to everyone what that nickname was. Where did that come from?
Okay, well, the best I can remember when you and I traveled in Truth together in 1987, 88, 89, somewhere in that area.
All three of those.
Late 80s, yeah. You the one thing I always remember about you, John, was you always had a Diet Coke, and you had and it was like, man, one of those few times that we actually stayed in hotels.
Yep.
Or we got to fly somewhere. You remember how the USA Today was free, like at the front desk?
Yes.
Or you could buy it for like 25 cents at the at the airport, and you would always reach in there real quick and grab the sports page
Yep.
out of the USA Today, and it was always a fight because there were like three of us that wanted to get it, and you always knew how to get the sports. So yeah, sports page was just kind of a nickname that you got.
Even when I had to pay for it, I would give the rest of the paper away because all I wanted to do
Yeah, you
was
would.
read the
Yeah, you didn't
sports.
care about the entertainment section or any of that other stuff. It was sports page, and that was back before it really like ESPN. I mean,
Yeah.
we had ESPN, but it was, the places we stayed, and that we didn't have that much knowledge. We didn't have the internet yet. We didn't have cell phones that could tell us every little thing.
Right. So, yeah, speaking of sports, one of the things that I remember about you when we were on the bus in 88, or no, I'm sorry, in the fall of 87,
Mm-hmm.
every Sunday or every Saturday night and every Sunday night, we would be watching for highlights and stuff because we didn't get to watch many games or anything.
Right.
And you told me all of fall of 1987, yeah, the running back for Oklahoma State's really good, but the kid that's sitting on the bench next year, he's even better. Tell everybody who
Yeah.
the kid was that was on the bench.
Yeah. Well, the guy that was Oklahoma State running back at the time was Thurman Thomas,
Right.
and I happened to. So this is crazy. So I was going to Oklahoma State at the time, and I got into a pickup basketball game, which was the worst decision of my life, with a bunch of the guys that were football players for the OSU Cowboys, and one of those guys was Barry Sanders. And I just remember it because you go to school there and you're a big sports fan, so you keep up with everybody that's playing. And he'd gotten in a couple of games when he was a freshman, and it was just, you could just tell this kid had something special. But man, I saw him on the basketball court that day, and he just blew my mind. I'm like, this guy's not built. He doesn't do things like other people that I've seen.
Right.
And yeah, I remember that was like right before I left school and came on the road, like within maybe 2 or 3 weeks before I left school and came on the road with Truth. And dude, yeah, he exploded. And obviously, I would say arguably the greatest running back in the history of football. That dude was amazing.
That's something coming from you because you're a Dallas Cowboy fan.
Correction, I was a Dallas Cowboy fan.
Oh, we have breaking news. Do tell.
No, we're divorced. I divorced the Cowboys about 8 years ago when I just couldn't take it anymore.
Tell me how that came about.
Well, I mean, I don't know if you've ever done this, John. I mean, you probably have with, I don't know, you're pretty loyal to your sports teams, but from what I can remember.
Yeah.
But they're just, how I got this epiphany. Like, if I had a girlfriend that cheated on me
Mm-hmm.
every week, or just continue to cheat on me, and I just kept forgiving her and bringing her back. That's why I feel about the Cowboys and
Right.
Jerry Jones as an owner, because I'm just like, they give all these promises every year, and all the sports writers believe it. Oh, this is the year of the Cowboys. This is a Super Bowl team this year, and they always disappoint.
Wow.
And I just got to a point where I'm like, I'm done getting my heart stomped on.
Right.
I'm like, this is never going to change. And I picked up fantasy football and played that, and I just had fun rooting for other teams and other players, and I just never looked back. Now I just love to watch quality sports, and I don't really have a team that I cheer for.
Right on. Well, that's cool. You want to hear something funny?
Yeah, please.
Until this year, I was loyal to my sports teams.
Hey, you're a big Dolphins fan.
I am a big Dolphins fan, and I still love Dan Marino. I love the Dolphins, but to be honest with you, they haven't won anything in 50 years that's meaningful, and I am not interested one bit. I haven't watched 5 minutes of one game this year, and it all boils down to one thing: politics.
Yeah.
I simply couldn't care less about their politics. So to be honest with you, I haven't watched 5 minutes of news or 5 minutes of sports all year long.
I think that's healthy. But you know what? I haven't completely given up sports. I still love the spectacle of it,
Yeah.
and just seeing athletes at the top of their profession, just doing what nobody else can do.
Sure.
I really do dig that, but it does put everything into perspective. You stop worshiping teams and players and stats and stuff like that, like we used to when you were young.
Yep.
You kind of see the other side of it, and you just kind of go, yeah, I don't know that I want to stop everything I'm doing to watch what you're doing and what you have to say. And whether you agree with them or not, I think it really opened a lot of people's eyes. And you can tell
Yep.
just by the numbers of people that stopped watching the NBA and NFL, um, the ratings that are down, the money they've lost in sponsorships.
Yep.
I think it has been an issue for them. And you're not the only guy the only one of my friends that has said, dude, I haven't watched a single NFL game this year.
Yeah.
That's significant.
Trust me, I've watched football 50 years of my life. There was nothing I loved in this earth more than NFL football.
Here's what's crazy. After you made that decision, did you really miss it?
Well, you know what I replaced it with?
What?
This podcast. I basically have traded the amount of time I used to watch football into putting it into this podcast, and I've had a blast.
That's so constructive, John. I'm so proud of you.
Right on.
Yeah.
Well, and had I not, who knows? We might not be talking now. So
that's right.
All right. So let's get to, for those that don't know, we've talked a lot about Oklahoma State and football in the last few minutes. You were a math major at Oklahoma State.
I was.
Okay, so explain for everyone how you went from being a math major at Oklahoma State to being interested in music and singing and then ultimately auditioning for Truth.
Well, let me tell you why I wanted to be a math major was because growing up in Waco, Texas, there wasn't a lot of, how would I say this, encouragement to follow a career in arts.
Right.
Right. It was, you're going to go work on a farm, or you're going to go work in the local Mars factory down the road, or, there wasn't a premium put on art, on music, on anything in that genre when I was growing up. And so there weren't a lot of musicians in my school. So I had no one to like hang out with, to talk music and to kind of push me and to compete with. There just wasn't that in the area of Texas where I grew up. But I knew I could sing. I had an unusually strong voice. When I would sing at my church, people would notice like more than normal that I had a gift. And I had a lot of people speak over me. I grew up in the Southern Baptist Church, so we didn't call it prophesying. It was just, it was like deacons of the church that would just really encourage you and say, man, I really see this in you.
Right.
So I did take that seriously, just to go, okay, I do have something unusual here, an unusual gift that I don't see in anybody else around me. But again, there was no platform or foundation of encouragement, even from my family.
Right.
They would say, you should pursue this. You should go be a music major. You should go try out for productions and or see if you can get on with a band somewhere. There just wasn't any of that. So, it was just kind of like this weird gift that I had that I didn't know what to do with.
Right.
And I didn't have any confidence with it. So when the time came to choose a college, when I graduated from high school, I was like, well, I'm really good at math. I'm really good at physics and science. Like that was just something that came really naturally to me. So I'm like, well, let's go somewhere where I can at least, have a degree in that, and I can go find a job somewhere. And if then music comes and finds me, then great. That'll be great. So my brother was at a church in Stillwater, Oklahoma, which is where Oklahoma State University is. And I just wanted to get out of Waco. I needed to change pace. So I'm like, well, I got a brother up there. They have a great math and science program, engineering program. I'll go up there and just see what that's like. So I went to Stillwater. It was a school at Oklahoma State. And immediately my brother started putting me on the worship team. And so now, for the first time in my life, I'm around really good musicians.
Right.
Really great singers that are pushing me, and I'm seeing what's possible with music. And I just take to it like a fish to water. I mean, these guys have become my best friends. In fact, my several of the band guys become my roommates in college. We start recording some original music. We go do some little shows here and there. And we even got some interest from a couple of national producers that saw something in us. But it still didn't feel like that was a long-term solution. Like it just felt really like, a million to one that we were going to make it in the industry. So I just continued to pursue my math degree. It was like, if it happens, it happens. And then, one day out of the blue, I get a call from Roger Breland of Truth, who happened to be old friends with my brother. He had tried to recruit my brother into Truth 10 years earlier.
Oh, wow.
To replace Steve Green when Steve Green was leaving Truth. So my brother at the time was like, I've got a good job here. I'm a worship pastor at All and Travel, but my little brother might be interested. So I got a call from Roger. I was in my apartment, and that was just a weird phone call. And he's just like, hey, heard you could sing. Why don't you come out and audition with us? And So this is crazy. I don't know if you know the story, John, but he said, um, get you a plane ticket. You have to buy it on your own. I'm not going to pay for it. So my dad shelled out like $350 for me to fly from Tulsa, Oklahoma. And Roger said, meet us in Greenville, Mississippi. I'm like, okay, great. So I begged my dad for money for a ticket. You know, I was just kind of like real nervous to ask him, you know, talking about leaving college when I didn't have my degree yet, chasing this music thing. I'll never forget what he said, John. He said, I was just kind of just hanging on the phone, just waiting for it, you know, waiting for him to shoot me down.
Right.
And he said, son, I'm going to tell you one thing. Don't forget this. Don't ever give yourself the chance to say, what if?
Oh, wow.
He said, you go do this. I'll buy your ticket. You go do it. For some reason it doesn't work out, you can always come back to school. But don't give yourself the chance to say, what if? I want you to go, whatever that opportunity is in front of you, go for it. I'm behind you 100%.
Wow.
That set me free. Like,
yeah.
I felt like I could go and not be concerned with what would happen.
Yep.
Or if I was going to disappoint my family by not finishing college. It was just huge. And so I fly to Greenville, Mississippi, and I'm just like, okay, now what do I do? I'm at the airport. Do I get a taxi? I had like $50 in my pocket. So I rent a taxi, and this guy has no idea where Faith Baptist Church is in Greenville, Mississippi. So we literally drive around for 2 hours.
What?
In the Delta down there.
Oh, no.
Yeah, for 2 hours. It's crazy. And we can't find a church. Finally, on the edge of town, way outside of Greenville, we find this place called Faith Baptist Church. And we've been stopping. And so, remember, this is like early 1987.
Right.
We had stopped, you know, at several pay phones and looked through phone books to try and find out where this church was. We finally find this Faith Baptist Church on the edge of town, and there's nobody there. It's all locked up. There's no tour bus. There's no truck. I was like, oh my God, what's going on? Like, is somebody playing this massive joke on me? Like, what is happening? So I go get a hotel room. My dad had bought a hotel room there in Greenville for me. And I'm just like, what the crap? Like, seriously, this Roger Breland dude can kiss my butt. I don't know what's happening here, but this is a terrible joke. So I get to my hotel room, and John, I can't tell you how many times I use this story in my leadership coaching and training. But I was just like, okay, God, I know you didn't make a mistake sending me out here. There's no way.
Right.
So I had heard my pastor preach this message about a week earlier. He said, the best prayer you can pray is help.
Right.
So I did. I just sat on the edge of my bed and said, help, Lord. I don't know what else to do. I need your help. Because I'm just like, I can't go back to my dad. And he's going to, I was still kind of worried about that whole dynamic. Just like,
right.
I can't believe I blew this. So I'm sitting on the edge of the bed, and this thought pops in my head. I remember Roger saying, Faith Baptist Church, it's right near Mississippi State University. So I'm like, interesting. And I thought, go get a paper. So I went to the front desk, got a sports page from the paper, opened it up, and it said, it was the front page of the sports page said, something about the girls basketball team at Mississippi State University, Starkville, Mississippi. And I went, oh my God, I'm in the wrong town.
Oh my gosh.
I'm in the wrong town. So now I'm like, okay, now what? Now what do I do? So it's like 6:00 now, maybe 6:30 in the evening.
Right.
And I know this, the concert's like at 7 or 7:30.
Right.
So I remember there across the interstate from where I'm staying, there's a big Baptist church.
Oh, wow.
So I walk across the interstate, go to this church. It's all locked up on a Wednesday evening, knock on this door, and this lady opens it up, and she's putting together you remember how
potluck?
Baptist churches used to have potluck dinners
yes.
on Wednesday
Every
nights.
Wednesday.
So she's helping put all this potluck dinner together, and I tell her my story. She didn't know who I am. I'm some 20-year-old kid from Oklahoma.
Right.
And she says, she calls. So she calls. She said, "Oh, hang on a second. My kids like Christian music. Let me call them." So she calls her son, and she goes, "Okay," and hangs up the phone. She says, "Okay, yeah, Truth's in Starkville, Mississippi at Faith Baptist Church tonight."
Oh, wow.
And I'm like, "Oh my gosh!" So I'm like, "How am I going to get there?" She goes, "Get in my car. I'll take you." It's like a 45-minute drive.
Oh, how cool.
So this lady who does not know me and has got all this work to do at her church, she says, "Get in the car. I'm going to take you to Starkville." She drives me to Starkville. I walk out of the car, walk up as the concert is starting. I see Roger Breland, and he goes, "Well, I thought you'd been here like 3 hours ago." And I said, "Bro, you sent me to Greenville, Mississippi." And I'm telling you, John, he heard me sing for 5 minutes after the concert. We went to the back of the bus.
Oh, wow.
He sat me down. He said, "Hey, you got a good voice. I think you'll do well here." He said, "But that's not why I'm hiring you." He said, "The reason I'm going to hire you is because you figured out how to get from Greenville, Mississippi to Starkville, Mississippi with no information other than what I told you on the phone."
Wow.
And you made it. He said, "I need a guy like you."
Oh, cool.
And that's how I got into Truth.
Oh, man. Well, you know what, Andy? That says everything anyone needs to know about you, period. That's why you do what you do every day.
Well, I tell my kids, I used to tell my kids this all the time growing up. There's always a way.
Always
Hey,
a way.
there's always a way. Figure it out. There's always a solution. Don't ever give up.
Okay, so let me pause and ask you this. Tell everyone what truth was to us and to most people. Describe truth for those that don't know.
So a group like Truth doesn't exist anymore, which is really sad because Truth, I think you would agree with this, and Roger Breland always hated when we said this, but it's true, was Christian Music Boot Camp.
Yeah.
Truth was a group that had 20 to 25 people at any given time, 8 singers, 4 band members, 4 horns,
Sound people.
2 or 3 technicians.
Yep.
Yeah, bus driver, truck driver,
Secretary.
spouses, of people that were on the road that would sell T-shirts and stuff.
Yeah.
And we would do a concert a night, almost every night of the week. I mean, John, am I exaggerating?
Oh, no.
When I say we do 300 to 320 concerts a year?
Well, in 1988, Andy, we did 345.
Oh my gosh.
We did 345 concerts in 1988. And the reason I remember that is because I literally slept in my bed one night that year.
Well, at least you had a bed.
Well, it was my mom and dad's house.
Yeah.
It's the one I grew up in.
You couldn't have an apartment. You couldn't
No.
have a car. You couldn't have another life outside Truth because literally it was like going in the military.
It was.
You had a bag and a briefcase.
Yep.
And that was it. And a suit.
No cell phones, no internet, no computers.
Nope. Mm-mm. No, in my briefcase, I'd have a notebook. I'd have a Bible, maybe 1 or 2 books. I would have a Walkman cassette deck and a pair of headphones, and that was it.
That was it. We pretty much all had the same thing because it's the necessities. It's all we had.
That's right.
I think Lanny had a razor.
Yes, he had an electric razor
Had an
that
electric
he used all the time.
Yep.
That's right, on the bus. Yeah, so and a lot of great musicians came out of Truth. I mean, if we want to go all the way back to I mentioned earlier, Steve Green, a couple of people from First Call, of course, For Him came out of Truth. Avalon. Let's see.
Alicia Williamson.
Yeah, Alicia Williamson, Natalie Grant.
Oh, go way back. The Imperials. Tom Reeves, Dick Tunney.
Yeah.
The musicians that played for the Imperials back in the heyday.
Yeah, and then you can't watch the CMAs without seeing at least 3 or 4 ex-Truth members.
Yep.
On that stage, either playing or Karen Lee.
Mm-hmm.
So Karen Fairchild, who is
Little Big
and
Town.
Lee Capolino, they both came out, and so Lee is now in Point of Grace, and Karen, of course, is in Little Big Town.
Yep.
Mark Childers.
Mark and Mike.
Yep. Mark Childers is the band director for Carrie Underwood. And then there's all the people that tried to get on the road.
All right.
There's those old stories that Michael W. Smith auditioned and wanted to come on the road, but Roger said he was too young. So yeah, it was one of those bands that unfortunately doesn't exist anymore, an experience that doesn't exist anymore. And the reason it's unfortunate is because it was such a great opportunity for young musicians like you and I
Yeah.
to just play somewhere every night. And we just didn't play every night. We played 2.5 hours
I know.
every night,
Yep.
every single night.
Everyone in Truth was good, which made everyone that got into
Yes.
Truth better.
Right. That's right. We pushed each other.
It was just stinking remarkable is what it was.
When I joined the front line of Truth, I was the only one of the guys there that didn't have a music degree or didn't go to school for music.
Yeah.
Everyone was 2 and 3, 4 years older than me,
Mhm.
had a lot more experience than me. I was just this 20-year-old kid from Texas who had a loud voice. I didn't have any polish. I didn't have the right clothes. But I knew I could sing
Right.
loud and sing for a long time. And, without that music degree, I had to prove myself in other ways.
Right.
And I just determined, the way I was going to survive in Truth, because if you couldn't survive Truth, if you couldn't hack it, and here's another thing: you got on the bus, and you usually sat with the guy you were replacing.
Right.
There would be an overlap there, maybe 2 weeks,
Right.
and that guy would sit down with you, and you would learn his parts, and you would listen to board tapes.
Yep.
Every single night, and there was a chart book of 35 songs maybe.
Yep.
That you had to know at any moment's notice, because every night the concert was different.
Yep.
A different group of songs. So you had to get in quick. You had to be good. You had to be solid every night.
Yep.
And if you lagged behind, man, that bus would pull over at midnight and drop you off at the airport.
Right.
And go back home.
Now, I can promise you, I'm not exaggerating this, and you know this for a fact. Perfect was the goal every night.
Yes.
It wasn't just a moving target. It was like perfect was it.
That's right. That's exactly right.
I'm trying to remember who you replaced.
I replaced Mike Eldred.
Oh, no way.
Uh-huh.
Oh, wow.
Yep.
That's cool.
And then Mike's gone on and done stuff on Broadway.
Yep.
And had a pretty successful career.
Yep.
Doing that. And again, another guy that just, the talent level that you're around every single day was just mind blowing, especially looking back on it. So yeah, it's sad that a group like Truth doesn't exist. And I tell worship leaders and musicians that I coach, I'm like, I hate to tell you this, but you're not going to get the experience that I got.
Right.
Because it doesn't exist. If you're lucky, you're going to sing 2 or 3 times a week for about 30 to 40 minutes each time.
Yeah.
1 in a million, you're going to join a band that maybe goes out on tour. And even that's not happening right now.
Right.
But you're just not going to, by the time I was 23, 24 years old, John, I already had my 10,000 hours.
Yeah. Truth was a doctorate degree in music for everyone that was there.
It really was. Yeah. Yeah. By the time I left Truth and joined For Him, I had already done 1,000 concerts. Think about that.
Unreal.
1,000 concerts.
Insane.
It's nuts.
That's a career for most people. Like 1,000 concerts is a career for most bands or groups. So before we move on from Truth, I want you to take a minute, talk as long as you want or as short as you want about Gordon Twists.
Oh my gosh. I was hoping to get to see Gordon this last year. My wife and I just had our 30th anniversary.
Congrats, by the way.
Thank you. We were going to spend a lot of that time up in New York City. I booked tickets to several shows. We had all our favorite restaurants that we were going to go to. We were going to stay there 4 or 5 nights. But one of the biggest things we were going to do was hang out with Gordon. Gordon still lives in New York City. Had great conversations with him before we, as we were planning our trip. And I was so looking forward, if anything, just to say thank you to him.
Right. Just
one more time.
Yeah.
Because I wouldn't be who I am without him. Gordon is a guy who was an original member of Truth, back from the early 70s. But he went on to have a career on Broadway as a vocal producer. So basically one of his big jobs was to get singers rehearsed and ready to go for performances. Yeah. And so he's just a monster when it comes to teaching you how to perform, how to get the best out of your vocal. So Gordon would come on the road every now and then. Roger would hire him to come out and spend some time with us. Yeah. And he was amazing. He's like 4'9", 100 pounds soaking wet. But he just had this incredible energy. He's got a puff of white hair on his head, And he would run all around the auditorium while we were rehearsing.
Yep.
And scream and throw his arms up and get in your face and tell you could be better, and I'm not getting enough from you. And I still hear his voice in my head, hearing, I want more. Give me more. I don't believe you. Give me more.
The funny thing about him, though, is he didn't just tell you, I need more, I need more. Like, he would tell you how to give him more. So he would tell you how to give him what he wanted.
Right. Yes.
Which is way different than someone that just doesn't like what they hear but can't tell you what they want.
That's right. And he taught me my vocal coaching of choice, which is singing on the breath, which, hard to believe, is not taught, because I'm teaching everywhere right now,
Right.
all over the country, and nobody knows singing on the breath. I'm like, how can you not know how to train your voice this way? Because every great vocalist in the history of time sings like this. But that's what Gordon taught me and all of us early on, was how to sing on the breath, how to get that power from your core, how to sing for 2.5 hours at a time. And like you said, be perfect.
Yeah.
Perfect was the goal. And it was attainable with Gordon by your side.
Yeah, it was.
So yeah, he was just, to me, he was the greatest mentor vocally and as a performer that I've ever had. And almost everything I teach, almost everything that I go back to when I'm getting ready to sing and perform, ultimately goes back to Gordon.
Yep. I feel the same way. And as a bass player, I don't think it didn't matter if you played second trombone.
Yeah.
He would make you better.
That's right.
It was just remarkable. So I just wanted to take a minute and talk about Gordon, because we all owe him pretty much everything I learned about playing in a band. I learned from Gordon Twist.
Yeah, he was amazing. And I'll tell you this, if you're listening to this podcast and you want to be great, you need a Gordon Twist in your life.
Absolutely.
You're not going to get there on your own. You're not just going to guess right every time.
Nope.
And we're all at heart lazy creatures. We're going to push ourselves until we go, I think I'll take a break.
Right.
When you have a Gordon in your life, you don't get a break.
Nope.
Gordon pushes you past what you thought you were capable of. It's like a personal trainer in the gym.
Yep.
Man, you can only do so much just by watching videos and reading things online. If you've got someone in your face telling you it's not good enough, give me one more.
Right.
We're going to push it a little harder today. That's when you really start to see results and you start to break through barriers. So everyone that wants to do something significant in their life, no matter what it is, you need a Gordon Twist in your life.
Absolutely. Okay, so Gordon and Roger and the 345 concerts a year, all of that prepared you for what was next. What was it like? Tell everyone what it was like to literally be launched out of Truth, off the Truth bus, into For Him and into CCM.
Well, it was a crazy journey, John, because you know this, being in Truth. Truth kind of had an underdog mentality to him, especially Roger Breland. And I love Roger, and he's a great mentor of mine. But Roger, I think, always felt like no one gave Truth the recognition they deserved, and rightly so. He's since been inducted into the Hall of Fame, but back in the day, it was really hard to get Truth songs played on the radio.
Yeah.
It was really hard for Truth to get really good, slots in television shows, and just the notoriety that all the artists were getting during that time.
Right.
Truth just seemed to be someone that was really overlooked, and it really bothered Roger because he had great people, great songs, great concerts. Anyone that ever came to Truth concerts will never forget it.
Yeah.
And so, we were kind of in that. We were all in that, just kind of that underdog. Nobody knows really who we are or what we do or what we're capable of. And Truth only had like one number one song in, up at that point in almost 20 years of ministry.
Right.
So when we decided, when Roger knew that the four of us had spent, about as much time in Truth as we could. But the four of us guys had a sound together because we'd sung together for almost 3 years. And he helped us get a deal at Benson Records where Truth was signed as an artist. We went in and did our first album together. And the song Where There's Faith hit the radio. We were still on the Truth bus in April of 2000. I'm sorry, April of 1990.
Mm-hmm.
And Where There's Faith hit the radio and just caught fire and was a number one song within 4 or 5 weeks of hitting the charts. And that was amazing, but it was also really odd because here we're in a band that had been trying for decades
Right.
to get some respect on radio, and then the four guys step out of the group, and while they're still touring with Truth, they have a number one song on Christian radio. So it was amazing. I remember that we got the news that our song had gone number one, and it was just before a Truth concert, and so we all celebrated, high five, and then we're like, okay, get on stage. Now we got to tear down.
Yep.
Now we got to load up the truck.
Yep.
Now we got to go stay in host homes, and the next day we got a 6-hour drive to Lincoln, Nebraska. So there's no time to celebrate and savor it. We just knew, things are happening, but we still have a job to do here.
Right.
And then finally, in August of 1990, we left Truth and went out on our own. And the great thing about that was we already had an audience.
Right.
Everybody that came to a Truth concert came to a For Him concert.
Mm-hmm.
And we were a new artist. In fact, we even won New Artist of the Year that year at the Doves, but we really weren't.
Right.
We had been doing this a long time. We had more experience under our belt than any other new artist out there.
Yep.
So, it was cool, but yet it's like we didn't stop doing our thing. It's not like all of a sudden like, whoa, look at us, America. We're here. We're the new Christian music group you want to hear. And it's like, no, well, we're going to do another concert, except now it's just the 4 of us,
right,
instead of 24 of us.
Right.
And we got our own bus and went on out and did 220 shows that first year.
Wow.
Out of Truth. We didn't know any different. We're just like, yeah, we'll take we play a show every night.
Right. Right on. No laying at the pool for you guys.
We did not take any time to savor it. And I think we rejoiced that second year because we only did 200
right.
shows that next year. But yeah, I mean, I don't know that For Him ever really sunk into any of us, because like I said, we didn't have that time of just going, we made it. Oh my gosh, we're on the radio.
Right.
It was literally, you made a record. We would always take a 2-week break at Christmas in Truth. We would finish like our last Christmas show with Truth on the 23rd.
Mm-hmm.
And we would be home by the 24th with our families. We'd spend 2 weeks off, and then we'd be right back on the road the second week of January. Right. Well, that year, in between 1989 and 1990, we did our last Christmas show with Truth, had about 3 days home with family, and then we're in the studio January 1, recording the For Him album, and we were back out on the road like January 10th, doing Truth concerts, and it just was like, we did a record, right? I think we did. Somebody's got that record. Well, we're out here doing all these Truth songs. And it just kind of was like a big overlap in our lives. And,
right.
I think that was pretty good for us. We just put our nose down and kept going to work.
That's remarkable. So I thought I was in For Him yesterday, but I'm back in Truth today.
Exactly. That's exactly how I felt.
Oh, wow. That's so cool, though. Okay, so you guys had tons and tons of radio hits. Give me 3 of your favorite For Him songs that you guys sang. You could either pick songs you sang or somebody else sang, but give me 3 of your favorites.
Oh, man. That seems to change in every season of my life. Yeah.
I mean, Where There Is Faith is probably one of the 3, right?
So I will tell you this before. Let me say this before I answer that question. So my daughter for a few years lived in Albuquerque and had her first baby down there, and it's about a 10 and a half hour drive from Tulsa to Albuquerque. So I was coming back all by myself. I'd taken my wife down there, dropped her off. Our daughter just had her first baby, so my wife was going to stay there, maybe 2 or 3 weeks.
Right.
So I'm driving back from Albuquerque by myself, and I had this thought, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to listen to every For Him album. There were 11 at the time. I'm going to listen to every For Him album chronologically from front to back on this trip, and it should take me about 10 hours.
Oh, wow.
And it was really cool, man. I'm telling you, I heard songs that I'd forgotten about. Like literally, I was texting the guys as I'm driving. I shouldn't have been doing that, but there's some long dead straightaways on I-10 or on I-40.
Nothing but armadillos.
Yeah, between Oklahoma and New Mexico.
Right.
But I kept texting the guys, just going, I forgot. I can't even sing the backgrounds of this song. I created the backgrounds for the song, and I can't even sing them. There are so many songs I'm just like, I forgot about that. That's a pretty good song. Or I hear another song and go, yeah, that wasn't very good. We thought it was great at the time. That's not a very good song. We shouldn't have put that one on the record. Or just all these really great memories came flooding through. And there were just some songs that I picked back up again. And I was like, I wish I had known then what I know now. We would have pushed that song a little more. That would have been a bigger hit than the other ones we released. So having said that, I would have told you before then what my 3 favorite songs were. I would tell you something different several years ago when I had that little experience of listening through all the albums without stopping. And now that I have 4 grandchildren, by the time this podcast airs, I'll have my 5th grandchild. And just the season that God has me in, I've lost both my parents. I've lost one of my best friends recently. My career has changed. There's some things that now when I listen to some For Him songs, I go, wow, that really speaks to me right now. So I might throw some at you that you may not even know, or maybe the people listening to this who know For Him don't remember. But there's a song called The Waiting on the Walk On album that I played a lot. Sometimes I'll just stick it on and just go, that's a really great piece of art. It's really great music, and the words just are all over me right now. So that would be one. Where There Is Faith, I still sing. Anywhere I go, I still do Where There Is Faith. I think that's just a timeless song.
Yep.
It gets better with age. It's helped me go through some transition points in my life over the last 5 or 6 years. And then if I had to pick a third, now I'm going to pick all the ones that I sang lead on.
Sure.
So no offense to the other 3 guys. But those are just songs that I was always drawn to and wanted to sing. I've been thinking a lot about my dad lately. He passed away about 10 years ago. His favorite song was a song called Chisel Meets the Stone.
Oh, wow.
And that's on the Face the Nation album.
Yep.
And that was a song written by Billy Simon. And Billy wrote a lot of songs for us in those first few records. But there's just something about that song that I hear it today, and I just have a tear roll down my cheek when I hear it, because I'm like, these are what I didn't realize at the time. And this is why youth is wasted on the young. Is because I didn't realize what I was speaking over myself. When you sing these songs, you're speaking these words over yourself and your family.
Yeah.
You're reciting them in your heart. And man, every time I hear those words of Chisel Meets the Stone, I realize now why my dad, when he was in his 60s and 70s, always gravitated toward that song. Because the older I get, the more I realize, man, those lyrics, may my life be fit, where the hammer meets the nail, where the chisel meets the stone, chip away what tries to hide the truth until there is a remarkable resemblance of you. Some of those lyrics are just like, I could never have written that. And I just thank God that I had the opportunity to sing them.
Right. So you're talking about songs that you love, song that your dad loved. Does it ever occur to you the impact that you 4 guys had on literally hundreds of thousands of people in the church?
John, I'll tell you, I'm going to be real honest about this. When we walked away from For Him back in 2006, we were tired.
Yeah.
We were tired. I felt like we kind of ran out of things to say. It was kind of hard to celebrate what had happened before, because we knew that we didn't see much of a future going forward. So it's kind of like a marriage. When a marriage falls apart, it's kind of hard to celebrate what came before, because you know that now it's ending and it's never going to be the same. We never had any bitterness towards each other. There's nothing like that. It's just kind of, we all came to the decision that I think this has run its course.
20 years is a long time.
It really is. And there, a lot happens in 20 years. good and bad, and things that that you can't unsay or unsee or
Yeah.
unthink. And, I don't think we took enough time away when we were doing it. We never took a break.
Mm.
And that really hurt us in the long run, I think. Had we taken a year off here and there, or, chose to do some other things instead of touring with our lives, I think we might have had more music in us. We might have had more longevity. But that's the way it was. We can't fix that. And so I'm not mad about it.
Right.
But I think all of us in some way walked away from and just set for him down and walked away
Right.
and went, that was great, but we need to do something else. And personally, I just didn't want to listen to For Him anymore. I didn't want to do any For Him concerts. I was working with a younger generation at the church that I became worship pastor at, that just didn't, they didn't like Christian music. They didn't really grow up listening to much more than Carmen,
Right.
or DC Talk, and For Him just wasn't in their wheelhouse. So I didn't go to a place where For Him was celebrated, really. So that also kind of helped me distance myself from the past. And then this is really cool. About 8 years ago, John, I started getting random Facebook messages from people that said, hey, I don't know if you've heard this in a while, but here's what this For Him song walked me through.
Mm.
And I started getting these testimonies. Like, I got a testimony from a lady who said she was so close to suicide that she knew she'd be dead within a week. And she found a poster that I had signed with a verse of scripture underneath it that she looked up. It brought her back to God.
Oh, wow.
She went to her church, got baptized, and she's living for God. And she's like, thank you for signing that poster in 1996. I'm like, what?
Oh, cool.
Are you kidding me?
That's awesome.
I'm hearing stories about where there is faith and the measure of a man and the basics of life, and for future generations, from people who are now in their 40s, 50s, and 60s, that are saying, had it not been for that song, had it not been for that concert I went to, I gave my heart to Christ at your concert in Louisville, Kentucky in 2002. And it just makes me go, whoa, God, okay, I get it. You got me. What we did in For Him really was orchestrated by you.
Yeah.
And there's a fondness now to all that I really cherish. And honestly, it brings me closer to the guys again, just to know, hey, God used us.
Yeah.
God really did something through us in our music and our ministry, and the people we were able to impact, the positive influence we had on young musicians. Since I've been doing my radio show, I have a worship radio show, and I have people like Tomlin and Mark Hall of Casting Crowns, and some of these other worship leaders across the country. They'll come on my show, and they'll go, oh man, I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for Him.
Right.
I would come to For Him concerts, or I would get that new For Him record and go, I want to do that someday. That's who I want to be.
Right.
And realize, man, God, I had no idea you were doing all these things. And so it's been just really cool to see how God has brought that back into our lives as a little kind of a wink and a nod, just going, you didn't really know what you were doing, but I did. I was doing something way beyond what you ever expected.
It's funny because the 10-hour drive, when you played all the For Him CDs in a row, that's what fans got to experience for years and years and years.
Yeah, you're right.
You guys never had the benefit of sitting and listening to a finished For Him album without having to go through the trouble and the painstaking process of making it.
Right. That's exactly. And then getting it ready to tour.
Yes.
And then listening to it going, oh, we should have done that. Oh man, I wish we would have mixed it this way, or we should have sang this line this way, or yeah.
But fans have been able to take that 10-hour drive every day since those albums came out.
That's right.
And that's the impact that it has on them.
That's a really good perspective, John.
Well, it's nice of you to say, but you guys, the impact, only eternity will tell the impact you guys truly had. Okay, so For Him winds down and comes to a close, and you move on and go into church work. I know you ended up at Church on the Move in Tulsa. But I think, didn't you work at a church before Church on the Move after For Him?
Well, so first, one of the big, and I didn't really talk about this when I talk about For Him disbanding for a season. I was kind of the impetus for that. I was the cause of For Him taking a break, just because, when I told you earlier about, growing up in a little Southern Baptist church and, these deacons and, elders of the church kind of speaking over me,
Mm-hmm.
what they were actually saying was, you're going to be a great worship director someday. You're going to be a really good music director. And I was just like, oh no, I'm not doing that. That is the nerdiest, squarest thing I could ever think of, because every worship director I knew
Mm-hmm.
was a nerd. Was just they had these operatic voices and they sang the square songs. I was like, no, that will not be me.
Right.
And I ran from that forever until I woke up one night. I think this was after a For Him Point of Grace show, or it might have been For Him Jackie Velasquez. It was some big show that we did. I remember waking up in the middle of the night after that show going, I had this vision or a dream. I don't know really what it was, but I felt like God spoke to me and said, there's something else I want you to do. That I didn't call you to Christian music. I called you to sing for me. And it was a broader idea than just singing Christian music. And it just kept sticking in my heart that I was to go back and help the local church. And one of the things that I really processed through that with a lot of people I talked to and, people that God had in my life that really helped me talk through some of these things was that, man, the Christian music industry was born because churches were not allowing really talented musicians to sing the songs they wanted to sing in their church.
Right.
They weren't letting them play their guitars and their drums and, sing their original music. And guys like Chris Christian back in the 70s and the early 80s began to see this and go, we'll make a home for you. We'll let you come. We'll give you a studio. We'll produce your songs and we'll actually put it in the stores for people to hear.
Yep.
And you talk to all those cats in the early days of Christian music, they were all youth pastors and worship leaders. And the early Christian music pioneers gave them an opportunity to do what the churches wouldn't let them do. So fast forward a couple of decades, what's happening? The church is losing all of their quality musicians to Nashville and to the Christian music industry. And now the church is completely bankrupt of anybody that can make anything, make any great art.
Right.
And I just felt like God spoke to me and said, I want the artists to go back to the church. I'm tired of the church not having quality art. And I just decided that's what I'm going to do. I think that's my first calling and that's what I should do. And so in 2000, I told this to the guys in 1999. I believe it was July of 99. We were working on our hymns project. And I told the guys, I said, I don't know what this means. This is what God's put on my heart. I'm putting a timer on my time and For Him, and I'm going to go to the local church somewhere, somehow. And it turned out that a friend of mine asked me to start a church with him in Orlando in 2000. So I kind of did both. I did For Him and was a local worship pastor, church plant guy in between 2001 and 2005. And then the pastor, Willie George at Church on the Move in Tulsa, called me. And at the time, they were about a 10 to 12,000 member church. And he said, I think you're supposed to come up here and be my worship pastor and start to really live out what's on your heart to do as far as arts in the church. And that was just kind of a dream scenario for me. So I called the guys and just said, hey, this is it. I'm done. I can't do worship at a mega church and keep this kind of schedule on the road. I was on full-time staff here at Church on the Move in Tulsa from 2005 till just last year, February of 2019.
Wow.
And I felt like God released me. Mission accomplished. You've done what I've sent you here to do, raised up a worship culture and a group of leaders that can carry on what you started. And so now I still lead worship at Church on the Move a couple times a month, but I also go to churches across the country and lead worship, coach worship leaders. I'm kind of my own Gordon Twist now.
That's awesome.
I want to be Gordon Twist to as many worship leaders and aspiring artists as I can I have a lot, we talked about this earlier, that 345 concerts a year,
Yep.
1,000 concerts with Truth, another 3 to 3,500 concerts with For Him in 16 years past that. I've been on stage leading worship over 5,000 times. I have a lot in my brain, a lot in my heart
Right.
that I want to download to as many people as possible while I still have a chance. So I think that's what my next 10 to 15 years, I call it my third act.
Right.
my first act was Christian music. My second act was being a full-time worship pastor and church staff guy. And my third act will be to be a mentor and a coach and just help as many young artists and worship leaders cross that finish line of being the best that they can be and getting the most out of what God's given them to do.
Okay, so what do you say to me when I walk into your office and tell you that I want you to help me be a better worship leader? What does that mean to you?
So, it's different for everybody. Everybody has a different talent level. Everybody has a different calling.
Right.
I think what we have to start out with is, who are you?
Mm-hmm.
What do you want to do? What do you feel like God's put in your heart to do? And then after that, it's what's in your hand to do.
Right.
So let's take what you have right now, and let's make it the absolute best that it can be.
Absolutely.
And we want to work. We want you to become so good at what you do that you can't be ignored.
Mm-hmm.
That you want to give yourself away so much
Mm-hmm.
in what you do, whether it's speaking, whether it's singing, whether it's writing, whether it's playing. I want to teach you how to give yourself away.
Right.
When you perform and when you get up in front of an audience. I do this with speakers as well, helping them to go from just saying the words on a page
Right.
to actually giving themselves away when they speak. Same thing with singers. We don't just want to sing the right note with the right word at the right time.
Yeah.
I want you to tell me what's deep in your gut and marry that to the notes and the words that have been given to your mouth to say and sing.
Right.
And then we've got something. I'm just going to teach you to be the absolute best you that you can be, using the gifts that you already have.
Right.
And that's the thing. You're probably not going to learn different gifts.
Right. Wow.
You are who you are.
Yep.
You've been that way since you were, probably a preteen.
Right.
But what you have is exactly what God wanted you to have.
Mm-hmm.
So let's make the most of what He's given you, and let's see how we can tie those gifts to your passion.
Right.
Because a lot of times there's things we're good at, but we don't really have a passion for.
Mm-hmm.
That means there's a roadblock somewhere, or there's been words, somebody said something to you that make you doubt yourself or hate that gift. And so that's a part of the journey too, is to see if we can connect the gift with the passion.
Wow.
And then, man, you start a fire that nobody can put out.
Dude, what a great response to that question. That's fantastic. Okay, so what would you say is the biggest obstacle or struggle in dealing with people that come in to have you work with them?
I would say that they're listening to the wrong voices. And I'm not saying I'm the right voice 100% of the time, but I also know just from, especially with singers, one of the things that really bothers me about worship music is that it's being so quickly written, so quickly produced, and it's being churned out that there's not like all a quality to it.
Right.
And especially with the singers, if you know this, if you've worked in a church, and you've worked in a church, John,
Yeah.
is that musicians aren't, for most churches in America, aren't taken from Juilliard
Right.
and saying, oh, you're an accomplished vocalist, you should come be a vocalist for our church. No, they see somebody with an ability and they have a need. And so they put somebody up with that ability who hasn't been trained yet and say, lead our church in worship.
Yeah.
And then they find some success at it. The church loves them. They start to grow a little bit. And then the pressure hits. Well, now we need more. We need more. We need more. And when you don't have any training with your voice or the way you communicate, you start listening to the wrong voices. You start listening to other people who have done it the same way you've done it. Well, the bad news is they're on a trajectory of ultimate failure with their voice and with their career. What you need to be doing is finding coaches. You need your Gordon Twist to come in and say, no, this is how you get stronger. This is how we get the best out of you. And this is how you do this 30 years from now. That's the biggest problem I see with communicators in the church, is that no one's coached them.
Right.
If you're going to be the pastor of that church, chances are you went to seminary. You have cut your teeth in youth, being a youth pastor or a children's pastor. You've worked your way up. But musicians on the stage, especially worship leaders, there's typically not that journey for them. And it's sad. And a lot of worship leaders, and I talk to them all the time across the country, they're in over their heads.
Oh yeah.
And they're literally, the clock is ticking on when they're either going to hit an emotional wall or a wall with their voice, and their voice is just going to fry out, and they're never going to be able to sing the way they wanted to sing.
Right. Okay, so for me, Andy, modern worship, there's a dark side, there's a sad side to it that I've experienced a few times. And I'll give you an example. A friend of mine up here, she's a great worship leader. She's got a great heart, loves the Lord, very talented, plays keyboards and leads worship. She called me one time and said, "Hey, I don't have a bass player for Sunday. I'm leading worship at a church down in Detroit. Could you play for me?" So I'm like, "Sure, I'm not doing anything." So my wife and I went down, and I took my bass and I was going to play for her. And we get there and we sound check and rehearse. And the sad thing is it's this beautiful traditional Nazarene church that's got a gorgeous sanctuary. What they had done is they had taken everything from the altars to the baptistry and painted the whole thing black. And then the rest of it was this really nice 70s, 80s. It was dated, but it was beautiful and it was well kept. And they'd spent a lot of money years ago, and I can just hear the conversations. They didn't want to redo it because it was still pretty. I get it. And we go back into the choir room to do the the pre-service meeting with the worship team and the tech team and everything. And there were these two cool 25-year-old haircuts sitting there with laptops and coffee, their feet up on the table. They'd obviously been to a seminar where they learned how to be the air traffic controllers of the service. And they were telling everybody what they're going to do. And when you do this, we'll do that. And then we'll do this, then you do that. And then, after all of this takes place, then this is when the pastor will come up and we'll make sure your lapel mic is unmuted and everything. And that's literally the only thing they said to the pastor was, "You come up at this time and we'll unmute your lapel mic so you're ready to go." That was the only input the pastor had in that whole pre-service meeting, was just taking one order from those guys. It was so sad.
Yeah, I've seen those situations more than I care to remember. And again, that you're hitting on something that, and look, here's the thing. Those 25-year-olds are doing the best they know how to do with the information that they've been given and the resources that they've been handed.
Yes.
But here's the problem. If nobody tells you that it can be better,
right,
then you're not going to get better. We're all creatures of comfort. We're all going to take the easiest path. None of us are going to choose a harder path to get from point A to point B. If we see an easier path to get there, we're always going to take it. And if along that easy path, if everybody around us says, "Hey, that was great. Oh, that's good," only because they don't know how to take that path,
right,
which means they don't know how to sing, they don't know how to play an instrument, then you're never going to get better. Yeah. You're never going to say, at some point I should take the harder path because it's going to make me better and I'm going to learn way more about myself and my job if I take the road less traveled. And here's the thing. There are a lot of churches that are growing despite the lack of excellence in their worship. Mm-hmm. And if you're growing and your offerings are good, why do you need to get better? Why do we need to change what we're doing? Right. This is going great. And that is the first thing that you let enter your heart that's going to cause your downfall.
Right.
Because we all know this. This is physics. This is what I learned in Oklahoma State in physics, is that if something isn't growing, it's decaying.
Yeah.
If something's not getting better, it's getting worse. There's nothing in creation that, except God, that is the same yesterday, today, and forever. Mm-hmm. We're all either aging or we're decaying. Yeah. We're all either learning or we're losing information. We're either getting stronger or we're getting weaker. We're either getting healthier or we're getting sicker. There's no in between. And if you don't have a mindset of, I've always got to find ways to get better, I need to rethink my process. I need to push more in my giftings. Then you're going to wake up one morning and realize that everybody's going to realize that you're the one that hasn't been growing.
Yeah.
And that happens in churches all the time. A church will grow, but the worship doesn't follow because, the pastor can't do it and the deacons can't do it and the elders can't do it. But these kids, they sure can knock out a set in 20 minutes and it's great. And they're not growing, and the church all of a sudden hits a wall. Mm-hmm. Guess what? The first thing they're going to come back to, well, the worship's not very good.
Yep.
Our services aren't great. The reason people aren't coming is because that church over there is way better at doing a service than we are. And now where are you? Now you're really behind.
Right. Okay, so before we wrap up here, Andy, tell everyone where they can find you in case they want to either contact you or hand you off to their pastor to contact you.
Okay, so the good news is there aren't very many Andy Chrismans out there. So if you'll just type my name in, Andy Chrisman, into your browser, you'll find me. You can find me at andychrisman.net. That'll get you the most info about what I do. You can also find me on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram at Andy Chrisman. I also have a worship show. If your listeners have Christian radio that they listen to, I'm on 400 stations around the world. It's a weekend worship show called Worship with Andy Chrisman. That's one thing that's been a real blessing to me because I stay on the cutting edge of worship music that's coming out and do interviews with artists. So you can listen to me on a lot of nights on Saturday nights and Sunday mornings on your favorite Christian radio station.
You've been doing that show a long time.
Yeah, it's crazy. When I first moved here in 2015, I get my years mixed up. When I moved here in 2005,
right.
There were 2 Christian radio stations in Tulsa, KXOJ, which has been here like 30, 40 years. And then Cox Communications had a station called Spirit 102.3. And Spirit 102.3 came to me and said, hey, we have this idea you should do a Sunday morning radio show. I'm like, that sounds interesting. I'll give it a shot. And they had budgets and they had just all this stuff set up for me to walk in. Same week, KXOJ came to me and said, hey, we love you. We've loved For Him. We've always played your music. We think it'd be great for you to do a Sunday morning radio show with us. I'm like, there's word on the street. I said, okay, so what are we going to do? And they're like, well, we don't know. We don't have a plan yet. I went, okay, I'm going to go to Spirit. Let's start there because they have a plan. I did that for about a year and a half, and then that station flipped to talk radio. And the guys at KXOJ just said, hey, bring it on over here. You know how to do it now. Bring it on over our station. And since then, we've grown to 400 stations. We're syndicated.
It's remarkable.
We have last year we had a great group of artists. We had Matt Redmond and Mercy Me and Cody Carnes and Carrie Job and anybody in worship music. They're all on the show.
Right.
And they're all friends of the show. And it's a great place to, I put playlists up all the time of new worship music. It's just a great place to stay current. I have pastors will text me all the time just saying, hey, we need to know what the most current worship music out there is. And I'll hook them up a playlist because that's what I do.
Yeah, dude, you do that, but you do a whole lot more than just playlists and stuff. So I'm proud of you. I can't thank you enough for doing this. I'm going to get you out of here in just a minute, but I just want you to know how proud of you I am and how much I love you.
John, I could say the same about you. I love you, buddy. Just hearing your voice takes me back to being on the bus with you and that Diet Coke in your hand. It's just and talking about Dan Marino. That just makes me happy.
Okay, I gotta go back to this real quick before I let you go. Okay. I mean, I could talk all day, but I know you don't have all day. The time you called me, you were at Disney World. Do you remember that?
Yeah, I do. You need to tell a story. I'll remember more of it. But yeah, this is sounding familiar.
Okay, so one day my phone rings and I answer it, and it's you, of course. And you said, okay, so I was standing in line at the Aerosmith Rock and Roller Coaster, and I'm thinking, I should call John. Aerosmith's playing. And I thought, no, I'll call him later. But then while I'm standing here listening to Aerosmith, Dan Marino just walked by, so I knew I had to call you.
That's right. That's right.
And I knew I had to call you because it was Aerosmith and Dan Marino. Hearing from you was great, but the fact that it was Aerosmith and Dan Marino that made you think of me was even better.
Oh, hey, speaking of Rock and Roller Coaster, okay, I got to tell this story real quick. I guess I'm okay to share this.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think I'll get in trouble. So the guy that designed Rock and Roller Coaster, he's a Christian and a big For Him fan. And he came to one of our concerts in Orlando one night and came backstage and opened up his laptop and said, "Hey, I just wanted to show you something." Introduced himself to us. "I want to show you something." So I'm an Imagineer at Disney. I design roller coasters and rides and attractions, and that's just what I do. And he said, "We have designed this new roller coaster at Hollywood Studios." And he said, "I programmed it to your song, The Ride of Life."
Oh, sweet.
And he said, "I just wanted to show you what the ride's going to look like on the simulator." So he plays the simulator on his computer, and you hear, "This roller coaster ride of life lifts you up and lets you down." And we're just like, "Whoa, this is so cool. Like, we're going to be a part of Disney." And he goes, "Okay, now, here's the thing. The people at Disney, they're not going to go for him music being played on a ride. They're going to want somebody really big name. But I just want you to know, whatever is chosen, you guys, your music, your song has been the inspiration for this ride."
Oh, dude, that's awesome.
So what it turns out is they chose Aerosmith. And if you've ever ridden the ride, you go through the whole Aerosmith experience and then get on the ride. But here's what we used to do. I used to take my kids and I say, "Okay, I know you're hearing a lot of Aerosmith music right now. It's really loud. But if you'll sing as they shoot you out of the tunnel to start the ride, you can sing, 'This roller coaster ride of life.'" And then there's a loop-de-loop, lifts you up and lets you down. Or there's a corkscrew, and I can't remember. It's been so long since I've ridden it. But you can sing the chorus of Roller Coaster Ride by For Him as you ride Rock and Roller Coaster. And I just thought, man, that's really cool. Not a lot of people are ever going to know that. But just those little things, I think God winks at you and goes, "Yeah, this is cool. I thought of you when we were doing this."
Dude, that is like the perfect ending to a perfect phone call, dude. That is fantastic.
Good. I'm glad I could help.
Thanks so much, Andy, for taking the time to do this today, man. I love you and I appreciate you.
Yeah, I love you, buddy. You're a lifelong friend, and I know we haven't seen each other face to face in a long time. Hopefully we can get together here soon.
Right on, dude. We will make that happen.
All right, buddy.
Hey Rockstar provides digital marketing software and services for your church to generate more interest, create more exposure, and reach more people. Let Hey Rockstar amplify the awesomeness of your ministry. And, as always, Hey Rockstar is a proud sponsor of the Stage Right with John Thorne podcast.
My thanks to you for listening today. Thank you, Hey Rockstar, for sponsoring, and my special thanks to Andy Chrisman for being my guest. Don't forget to share the podcast. I'll see you next Friday. Have a great week.